Hey guys, before we start the video, we just want to take a quick second and remind you about the worship night this Saturday at 6 o'clock. Come expecting the Lord to move. It's going to be a great time. We hope to see you there. Hope you enjoy the video and have a great night.
So last week we got into Galatians chapter 3, and this week we're going to be finishing up the second half of chapter 3. And Paul is still trying to make this point to the Galatians and the Judaizers that it's about grace. It's not about your works. And so he begins in this second half by using Abraham as an example. And he says in Galatians 3:16, he says, "Now the promises were made to Abraham and to his offspring." It does not say and to offsprings, referring to many, but referring to one, and to your offspring, singular, who is Christ. So he's making a point that you guys think that God made this promise to Abraham, thousands of years ago, and that because of that promise that he made to Abraham, that you have right standing with God. And what Paul is saying is that the promise was not actually about the Jewish people. The promise was not about Abraham's offspring. It included them, but actually what was in this promise was when he said to Abraham, when he said that through your offspring all the nations of the world will be blessed, he was referring to Christ. He was saying that the Messiah would come through Abraham's lineage, and that through Christ all the nations of the world will be blessed. So here's Paul's logic, his line of thinking on this. Abraham wasn't made right with God by following the law. Abraham was 430 years before the law. After the law is Christ. And how are people made right with God? When Christ comes, by faith. So he says, before the law, people were made right with God by faith. That's how Abraham was justified. After the law, people were made right with God by faith. So in between, you have this segment of time where people are trying to follow the law to be made right with God. So then the logical question that comes up is, well, then why did God give the law? If we were all made right with God by faith before and after, what was the point of the law? And so he actually asked that question in verse 19. He says, after explaining all this, he says, okay, why then the law? It was added because of transgressions, or you could say because of sin, until the offspring, which was Christ, should come to whom the promise had been made. Verse 23. Now before faith came, we were held captive under the law, imprisoned until the coming faith would be revealed. So then the law was our guardian until Christ came, in order that we might be justified by faith. So he says the whole purpose of the law is to lead to justification by faith. Now I know that it's tedious, it can be cumbersome to kind of understand that, but basically here's what we got to understand. When we talk about law, okay, if there's 20 people in the room tonight, there's probably 20 different ideas of what the law is. Okay, some people are going to think about the Levitical law, the Mosaic law, about slaughtering lambs, about washing clothes, and this. Okay, but really what's being referred to here is a period in time when man was under the law. Okay, 75% of your Bible is written under the law. People prophesied under the law. People got married under the law. People raised children under the law. People did business under the law. And when you think about law, this is what he's talking about. He's not even specifically talking about only some rules that were given. He's talking about a culture that was created. The law affected everything. It affected your relationships with one another. It certainly affected your relationship with God. So there was a mindset under the law. It was very oppressive in a way, and it was because of sin. And Paul's very clear about this. There's nothing wrong with the law. But when sinful man interacts with perfect law, it created this oppressive environment, this legalistic environment where it became all about rules and regulations, when in fact we're supposed to be worshiping God from the heart. We're supposed to do as unto our neighbor, not because the law says it, but because of our heart, because of the love of God in our heart. So law created this almost oppressive environment, and again, it wasn't the law, it was sin in man that created it. But when those two combinations came together, it created this environment where man was constantly trying to please God, but could never live up to it. And it was this inability to live up to the law, to follow the rules and regulations that eventually pointed people to the need for a Savior. And the argument that Paul makes, and he doesn't just make it in Galatians, he also makes it in Romans. The argument he's making is, as a sinful, corrupt, deceived human, we would have never come to the point of realizing our need for a Savior had the law not been given, and that's the reason for the law. The law was given so that knowledge of sin would be revealed and known in us, and we would realize we can't keep it. And Jesus emphasizes this point even further. He comes along and says, okay, even if you think you are keeping the law, let me show you how you're not keeping the law. He said, because if you think, well, I'm keeping the law because I haven't committed adultery. Jesus says, no, if you have adultery in your heart, you've broken it just the same. Jesus comes along, he says, oh, you think you're keeping the law because you haven't murdered your brother, you haven't murdered someone. He says, no, if you have hatred in your heart, it's the same thing as murder. You're a lawbreaker as well. So Jesus takes it even further to man's sinfulness, maybe of self-righteousness, where they're saying, oh, I'm not so bad at keeping the law. Jesus comes along and says, even those of you who think you are keeping the law, let me show you really what it means, because you're not, because it's also about what's going on in your heart. And a lot of the teaching that we see in the New Testament from Jesus further reveals the point that no one's keeping the law. No one is able to keep the law. And it's without Christ, without a Savior, we'll never be able to keep the law. Romans 3:19. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. So there's proof again, the purpose that the law was given. It was to reveal knowledge of sin. It was to eventually point us to Christ. To understand this, there are some things in life that you can't teach a person. You know, I feel like understanding having children, understanding being a parent is one of those things. You can't understand what it means to be a parent and what it's like to have a child until you become a parent and you have a child. No one can explain it to you. There's no explaining or teaching it. You know, I remember when I learned a lesson that kind of falls in this category, and that is learning the value of money. So, you know, I have two children, McKinley and Dakota, they're 6 and 5, and they don't understand the concept of money yet, you know, and you can't just teach them, you can't just explain it with words, you have to demonstrate it. You have to put them through certain things to help them understand it. And I remember I remember the summer when I learned the value of money. I remember how it happened. We were going on family vacation, and every other summer my parents had just paid for family vacation. And that was great, you know, so we appreciated it, but I don't know that we fully appreciated it because we didn't have to pay for it ourselves. So I remember my mom and dad, they told us kids, they said, now this year, whatever you buy, whatever you spend on vacation, it's going to be your own money. You're going to have to earn your own money. And so my dad owned a nursery, and this was the deal that they told us. They said, you know, you go out in the nursery and you pull weeds out of the plants, and for every bucket, it was like a 3-gallon bucket, for every bucket of weeds that you pull and you dump it, then that's going to be $6 for each bucket. So I thought that was a pretty good deal until I realized how long it was taking me to fill those buckets. So I worked hard for weeks. I don't know how many buckets of grass I dumped, but I made over $100. I kept pulling weeds and dumping it. And so all of a sudden, that money became very precious to me. And I learned this lesson, not because they taught me, but because I had to work for it myself and I experienced it. Well, the end of this story, which is kind of funny, this was in, the late 80s, maybe early 90s. Whenever fanny packs were popular, okay, that is when this is happening. And I had a fanny pack. It was a beautiful fanny pack. I remember it. It had a little bit of hot pink on the sides. It was like perfect. So I was so proud of my fanny pack, but I was more proud of what was in the fanny pack, which was all the money that I had earned that summer. So we're on vacation and we're at this petting zoo. And I've got my fanny pack on, and inside is all my hard-earned money that I've made, all cash that I've made for that summer. And now I'm sure my parents counseled me in their wisdom to have smaller bills, but for a kid it was really cool to have like $50 bills and stuff like that. So I specifically remember I had a $50 bill in my fanny pack. And I accidentally had left it open, and this billy goat comes up to me, and I'm petting the billy goat, and he eats my $50 bill right out of my fanny pack. And I seriously, I was begging my parents, I really wanted to stay around until that $50 bill came out the other end because it meant so much to me. My dad still jokes about it today. So it was that summer that I learned the value of money. Now that's a funny story, but it's the experience that taught me the value of money, and I still remember it to this day. Now if you're trying to understand why the law, why did we have to, it's because it was something that could not be taught. It could not be explained to us in words, man's sinfulness and our need for a Savior. This was God's way to redeem mankind. The law came, and for generations went through under the law. 75% of our Bible is law, all for the purpose the whole purpose is for us to read it and go, oh my gosh, that's what it's like to be under the law. Oh my gosh, that's what it means to please God perfectly. Oh my gosh, that's what it means. And as we read through it and we read the prophets and we read the scripture, it's meant for us to come to this realization and to this point of going, oh my gosh, I could never live up to that. I could never be perfect in that way. I could never please God in that way. And the message of the New Testament is, you don't have to. Jesus did it. Jesus fulfilled the law perfectly, and that's the reason that he said in the New Testament, I didn't come to abolish the law. Why didn't he come to abolish the law? He didn't come to abolish the law because the law was perfect. There's nothing wrong with the law. The law did not need to be abolished. The law was perfect. But his point and what he's saying there is, I didn't come to abolish it, I came to fulfill it. So Jesus was a fulfillment of the law. In other words, I didn't come to say, oh, let's get rid of this because it's not working. What he's saying is, the law has a appointed end, and it's when I fulfill it. That's what Jesus was saying. He said, when I come and I live this perfect life under the law and I fulfill it, then the law will be complete. The purpose of the law will be complete. And from that point forward, it's grace. And so, the question comes, okay, well, what do we do with the law? Well, the law still serves the law serves a tremendous purpose still today. Because when you read the law, you're getting insight into the mind of God. You're getting insight into what pleases God, etc. And we are to strive and live for holiness. But really the purpose of the law in a New Testament believer is to point them to their need for a Savior.